You know that turf war that's going on around the nest of Elko? Well, we've seen one player in this, and now we're moving on to another. Next, we have the Thumb. Now, we've seen a subsidiary of this finger, the Kurokumo clan. This is the finger itself. They're patterned on the mafia, so expect some Italian-American mafia speak during this. Well, I want to make sure that I get the overall message of this group of guests across. They're sticklers to hierarchy, or top-down obedience. They have OCD levels of adherence to this. This is to the point that if one below a superior does something like, talking back or looking at them in the wrong way without asking permission, they are punished severely. Blind obedience to superiors and adherence to protocol is taken most seriously. They're friendly towards their own that follow it, even considering that they can be quite brutal at times. Well, they also pack a good amount of heat in a quite different way to the likes of the Full Stop office regarding firearms, as they use special ammo. They also attach bayonets and a buttstock to their rifles in order to engage in melee combat, and so are more versatile than Vasvik's office was. There was at least 19 FUM subsidiaries. If there are others, it's unclear. It's also unclear if that's just in the southern part of the city. First we have Carlo. He's a sotocapo, or underboss, of the southern part of the city. He understands the hierarchy of the FUM, divided into 4 echelons. There's the common soldado, or soldier, / good fella. Yeah, as in Goodfellas. That movie. Then above them is the capo, or captain. Then above that one is the sotocapo, the meaning of that being previously mentioned. And even above Cano, there's the capo de capi, or the Godfather. Yeah, as in that trilogy of movies. He understood the structure applies to those outside as well. A common fixer is the equivalent of a soldado. A fixer affiliated with one of the associations is the equivalent of a capo. A board member of a wing, such as that one in that warp train that got turned into a puppet, is the equivalent of a sotocapo. I'm guessing that the one in charge of a wing is the equivalent of a capo de capi. That's how it works, so even an outsider isn't exempt. Everyone must remember their place and show respect, regardless of their typical behavior. A careless fixer that isn't an association affiliate that speaks to a capo before being spoken to, well, that picchiotto, as in one that's been recently made, will lose their teeth and jaw. Those on equal standing, on the other hand, will be greeted politely, and they're more willing to talk with such an individual. Courtesy and decorum are highly valued to a thumb. It's advisable to treat those above you, as far as standing is concerned, with devotion and delicacy, as say the wrong thing, or even say something the wrong way, is going to be painful. Class is earned, not given away, so it should be respected. Next we have Denise. She's one of the capos that carries out the will of Callow and brutally punishes those that speak out of turn, often reciting the punishment for breaching protocol. In fact, she doesn't really talk that much, usually when it's necessary. She understands that weaklings exist, even in a powerful syndicate like the Fun. Even the strong can have their bad days. They can succumb to cowardice and slip up as far as the rules are concerned. When one violates the rules, or if someone tries to disrupt the hierarchy, be they part of the Fun or if they're an outsider, syndicate or otherwise, they get bumped off within a few days, no matter how much beef they have. What matters is that they're insolent. Yeah, really should stop doing that. It'll be hard. Well, it appears that extreme sentencing, or punishment, well, however you want to put it, it's seen as the best way to discourage future violations. To some, it might be nitpicking, but that doesn't matter. What does matter is that you should do what you can to not your superior off. Something basic that so many seem oblivious to, at least as far as she's concerned. Then we have Boris. He's another of Kalo's capos. He understands how the Thumb uses different types of ammo, where they need the right ammo for the right situation. Although it's still expensive, even for those who are the apex predators of the backstreets. So they need to use them wisely. Being trigger happy can be wasteful, idiotic, and expensive. Which is why the bayonet and buttstock are attached to their guns, and are the primary method of attacking. Most of the time. They don't shoot unless they're sure that they'll hit something. Now, that buttstock is certainly capable of beating humans to a bloody pulp. As for the bayonet, that cuts through like you'd expect it to. Although it can help to get augmentations that enhance strength as well, which he appears to have, as he favours using his fists to the bayonet and the buttstock of his gun. Yeah, quite the bruiser, isn't he? Then we have Catriel, a capo that appears to be Kalo's second in command within his southern base. She understands that the Thumb's way of doing things, such as blind obedience to your superior, and that includes killing and dying if you're ordered to do so, even if the orders are baffling. The important thing is, do not defy them, as failure to carry out those orders will result in those who fail being straightened out or immediately and brutally punished. That's another way of putting it. And this is even if the order comes from one that's just one step above you. Makes no difference. Follow it. At least unless someone higher than that person gives an order that says otherwise. Although while it's rare to happen, a high-ranking individual can temporarily devolve their power to a subordinate, usually when there's some business that prevents them from joining a meeting, or when they need to appear to explain something more professionally, without the personal side getting in the way. This is rarely done, as hierarchy is quite significant to the firm, so a transfer of authority, that's not done lightly. As for the common soldato, they see the thumb as the most cultivated and humane of the five fingers. Okay, how bad must the others be for the thumb to be better? Well, if you count mutilation as certain punishment for speaking out of turn, which explains the Kurokume clan's behavior earlier, well, they understand that you just need to be polite and know to respect others. Or more specifically, those above you. Although, at least keeping to themselves this question, they questioned how the thumb got to the top of the pile in the Hana Association's list of syndicates. Well, it wasn't good manners alone. It was the hierarchy. Something that, well, it almost seems to be considered sacred to them. They understand this as natural, as knowing that spilt blood flows downwards, not up. Blind obedience to superiors is where the good manners come from. Well, better certain punishment for speaking out of turn than obeying a prescript telling you to kill someone, even if it makes no sense. As for where they fit into the story, we find ourselves at the meeting room within the firm's southern base, the front lines of a gang war between the firm and the Index. Kano, the Soda Capo in charge of that base, thanked those in attendance of the firm summit. Those attending this sit-down acknowledged this out of respect. Kano found it good to see all the families, all the firm subsidiaries, gathered in one place, except one, the Ruminos cartel. This was due to the Black Silence, icing much of their ranks some time ago. Yeah, a color fixer, not one to take lightly, considering what the red mist is like. That was certainly demonstrated in the Botany Corporation. They were still recovering from that. Now, how do you think Callow responded to this report? That they were still rebuilding after the Black Silence trashed them. Well, he cut them off due to that toothless mutt not rearming quickly enough. Well, it looks like that seat is likely in need of replacing then. Catriel, one of the couples, understood this. As for the more immediate matters, the thumb would be taking direct command over the battle for Elcor's nest and the library. He appreciated the families that have demonstrated much effort in that battle. Then a captain of the Kurokumo clan said, "You have no idea how many of our members died for that." And an underboss of the Ramier family complained about how much money their family had poured into that conflict. An idiotic expression, as the beef that they had resulted in blows struck by Callow, asking, "Who gave them the right to speak up?" Boris told them that they have to stay quiet when an elder was talking. Show some respect. The subsidiary underboss of the Ramier family should know better than that, never mind the Kurokoro clan's captain. Denise then speaks of what happens when a subordinate dares to speak without their superior's permission. The lower jaw is removed. Ooh. The boss of the Ramier family, who is a subordinate of the Thumb Sotokapo, apologized on behalf of their underling, as did the patriarch of the Kurokuma clan, for his subordinate's rudeness. The half-witted fool would be made to take the fall later. Although he does share their captain's sentiments. Why back out now, after they've given so much effort? Although careful to watch his tone, unlike his captain. Callow understood how disappointing this was. Much blood was spilled to earn their share of turf before the street relocation happened, as in relocating those that lived there. He wished that he could give out a sizable chunk of land for all families gathered there. But that decision didn't come from him. It came from the Capo di Capi. He demanded this, and they have to obey it. Capiche? Carlo went on to talk about third party and their gang war against the Index, those that pilfered the Nova Fabric. Ah yes, Tanya. She wiped the floor with the Kurokumo clan, and forced the survivors of that group to go into the library. She's also affiliated with Argalia, the Blue Reverberation, and his ensemble. Yeah, Argalia, he's shown his hand. The Kurokumo clan patriarch was deeply ashamed at this. Gallo was more forgiving of this, telling him to not be too hard on himself, as he'll pardon his manners by only cutting his left hand off. Well, he could probably afford a new one with his ill-gotten gains. The patriarch thanked Callow. Callow then went on to say that trivial matters can't distract him in times like that, as the Capo di Capi's orders take priority above all others. Then the leader of the Night Owls questioned the wisdom of the Capo di Capi's demand, asking what he was thinking. Uh-oh. This is beyond village idiot levels of professional idiocy. As Denise proceeded to deliver the punishment for one who dares question the orders of their superior. As the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland would put it, as in a character that in some illustrations was based on the short-tempered Queen Victoria. And that punishment involved the line, "Off with your head!" Yeah, he croaked. Did getting his head cut off. Carlo considered this most insolent, questioning the intentions of the Capo de Capi. Such impure thoughts. This is one of the worst breaches in protocol that anyone could make. He ordered all those present to bump off all the night owls by that night. Catriel told them that she would give the word for this to happen. The boss of the Remia family bootlicked Callo, calling the night owl leaders impatient. He should have waited. Callo then spoke about what the Capo di Capi told him regarding the index. The order was to not let the index claim a single area of Elcor's nest. The reason why the thumb was going to take over operations there and ordered the subsidiaries to pull out, as they were no match for the proxies of the index. This was all to save their strength. This also applies to the other sort copy of the thumb and their families. It would appear that Callo was the eldest of the thumb and their associates present, at least in that southern piece. Meaning that among them, he has seniority. He then said that it was bigger than taking a few blocks of space. The others understood and acknowledged this. I really should stop speaking like that. I'm so sorry for anyone present having to listen to that. At times I can't help it. Upon watching this, Angela sees the thumb as having a quite rigid structure. Roland described the rules and hierarchies of the fingers as paranoid, if the index wasn't a good enough indication of that. Well, paranoia implies the threat is imagined. In some cases, it's far from imagined. It's quite real. Regardless, it's different with each of them. But if the rules are broken, whoever did so had it. The ways each finger deals with rule breakers can vary. For example, the index likely involves a proxy killing the rule breaker due to a prescript ordering them to do so. Angela saw this as a survival strategy in the city. Roland confirmed this, where they survive by shoving themselves into a seemingly unbreakable shell, the fingers being the core of that shell, the apex of the backstreets. Angela understood that the soldatos sent into the library were guests to be received. Guests that were surprisingly silent. Wonder why that was. They were defeated by the librarians, and their combat abilities were added to be used at their discretion. As for the Night Owls, most were killed by the thumb for their leader's insolence, but Alan and a few of the Night Owls found an invitation and used that to escape certain death. Alan was surprised that his hot-headed sociopath of a leader didn't get killed sooner. They received an early warning that allowed them to escape. Yeah, even lower-ranking members of that former Thumb subsidiary knew better. They knew that if there's no good suggestion to make, it's better to just shut up. They entered the library in the hopes that they could find something that would convince the Thumb to spare their lives. Those that entered the library, armed with their stiletto stabby knives, they joined the fun soldados in death. Angela observed that the fun mainly used firearms, and they used different ammo types. Well, compared to the full stop office. She also observed that they used their weapons in melee combat as well. Well, this was because those slugs don't come cheap, as previously stated by Roland. Stop doing that! The bullets are self-made, which is a possible loophole regarding the part of the ethics law about how much ammo they can carry, as technically it's not ammo yet, but the different parts of the ammo are still ruinously expensive to most. And even then, they'll only fire when they need to, hence why they engage in close-range combat with their adapted firearms. Bone-crushing swings from a rifle, specially adapted, that can withstand more than some augmented individuals. And don't get me started about the bayonets. They're certainly good enough to cut people's heads off. This isn't the last that we've seen of the fun. Then Roland entered the floor of religion, a floor that smelled like danger to him. Roland, danger exists on any floor, not just that one. Well, any floor that has guests on it. Then he encountered Hokma, who was originally Benjamin, one of the founders of that iteration of Elcor, Lobotomy Corporation, along with Ian and Carmen. All three had a mission: to cure the disease of the mind, with the help of a few others. Carmen was gone by the time Garion, arbiter of the head, attacked that lab in the outskirts. He and Ian survived, but at the cost of Daniel, that's elite, and Kali, the Red Mist, along with the lives of many others. He also assisted Ian in making Angela, who was cold and distant towards her, something that Benjamin was not. His devotion to Ian had some implications that he was in love with Ian. Well, as we've seen with Olga and Mio, it doesn't look like that homosexuality was a problem in the city. However, this was one way as Ian was closer to Carmen, which was why Ian was dedicated to the completion of the Seed of Light project. He was also the last to walk out on Ian, when his obsession with finishing what Carmen started was too strong to be overcome. Although he did come back to leave some messages of warning for the many iterations of Ian that would be caught in a cycle, only to be caught by Angela, who then killed him and then turned him into Hokma, the last of the Separats to be recruited. Back in the present, Hokma acknowledged Roland's presence. Roland told him who he was and that he'd bring books to him from that point onwards. Hokma knew that Roland was Angela's servant, which he makes no attempt to deny. Hokma noted that he seemed content with his role. Roland denied this, as the only other option was death. He understood that Hokma was not too fond of Angela, or him, being her lapdog. This was based on his overbearing attitude from the start. Well, Hokma had no reason to treat him with any courtesy or greeting, so he got to the point. His faith in Angela had long been crushed. Roland remarks that he'd make good friends with Yasud. Can't really argue with that. Hokma dedicated his life to fulfilling the wish of Ayin, the wish that Angela destroyed. Yeah, Roland understood that by now, based on what he's been told by the others. He also understood that Hokma saw him as an accessory to what Angela was doing. Hokma was irritated enough to be silent by this. Roland then asked him if he had an agreement with her, to help her to complete the library, to find the one book she wanted. Roland was asked by Hokma if he truly believed that the one singular book existed, as Angela claimed. Roland believed that she wouldn't look for it if it didn't exist. Hokma noted that the invitation would lead her to that book, and asked how Roland could put his faith in that invitation and Angela so easily, besides her promise to give him freedom once she has what she sought. Roland believed that, due to the library expanding, while Angela and the other librarians were slowly changing, Hokma saw this as the basis of his faith. Actually, it's seeing it as proof denying faith. Well, regardless, Hokma saw this as preposterous. Roland asked what his point was. Hokma just told him to bring him more books, likely involving religion, as he's been bored until then. Roland then left Hokma in peace for now, as they clearly didn't get on with each other. Next we have the Snow Queen. Yes, this is from another story by Hans Christian Andersen. Yeah, that Dane gets everywhere, doesn't he? This is also the template for what became Frozen. In both this and the story that this abnormality was based on, 3 kisses was lethal to the one that received it. In the facility, she delivered a glass shard to one that got a bad result, or have the possibility of receiving that with a normal result. And if she's triggered again, she literally puts them on ice, requiring an employee to fight for them. The higher the fortitude, the better the chances of survival. If that employee fails, both employees died, which is more or less how it went in the story. Although it did involve something more of a cerebral challenge rather than outright conflict. Although one commonality, it involved a magic mirror, which in the story changed people into their worst. This mirror got shattered, and the shards went into people's hearts, giving them the ability to see everyone as their worst, where normally the mirror would change people into what they would look like as their worst. Now, this had an adverse effect on the psychology of those affected by this. In the library, she freezes all but Roland, and it's advisable to free the others before taking on the Snow Queen herself. Yeah, Roland knew better than to fight alone. If he had backup. Upon Roland confronting her, she challenged him to prove his bravery to her, to see if he can thaw that frost, commending his courage while taunting him that those that could help him were frozen in icy prisons, even questioning his determination to save the others. When he saves an assistant librarian, she tries to convince him to surrender, while noting that they desire to see the sunrise, to claim the roses that would bloom, although she believes that she'd forever remain within her palace, noting how each prison crumbles one by one. Once all the icy prisons are freed, or more specifically the assistant librarians within them, she was enraged that they sought to attack her, speaking out against their arrogance in the attempt for her kingdom, telling them not to defile her kingdom more than they already have, yet understanding that they desire to keep fighting, while questioning if they had what it took to best her. As for what Roland thought of this, he noted that everything froze over. Yeah, hell isn't much worse than that, which isn't likely to go away anytime soon. He has concerns with his assistant librarians, and after he frees each from their icy prisons, his assistants were disoriented upon being freed, but they snapped out of it, thanking those that freed them. Upon defeating her, they didn't see anything that's changed much with the palace, and noted the thawing environment as spring was coming. As for the stage of the Snow Queen, it's a large palace made of ice, with several pillars and ice crystals in the background, with a set of stairs leading to the Snow Queen's ice throne. There's a howling wind heard throughout that battle. This wind stopping and cracks appearing in the floor once all the prisons of ice are destroyed. And it's not just the floor that's cracked, it's also the pillars and ice crystals in the background that are broken. Vines and roses grow around them as a consequence of this. Yeah, she clearly doesn't like flowers growing. She probably wouldn't get on that well with a Ruina and Porcupus then. After Roland defrosted the Snow Queen, he had to deal with a thawing Ice Queen. Specifically, Angela, who was meeting the upper floor patron librarians, Bainar and Hokma. Now these two are deeply personal to her. Bainar being an arbiter of the head, the one that pushed Ain farther than he previously was, after having failed to kill him and Benjamin. Speaking of which, Hokma was one who worked on her with Ian when he was Benjamin, the one who gave her the support that Ian denied her. Both of them were before her, and she hesitated to speak to them. Bainar encouraged her to say something. Hokma was mildly annoyed by this pointless waste of time. Roland told them to loosen up and start talking. Angela acknowledged that it had been a long time since they last talked. Bainar suspected that it was because she was afraid of them, that she'd rather not interact with them if she could help it. Angela admitted that she's not comfortable with talking with them face to face. Considering their history, that's understandable. She noted that their awakening meant that the library was nearing completion. Hokma realized that she's closer to achieving her aim, her goal, whatever you want to call it, than ever before. She agreed that the one book that she's desperately wanting, she believed that she'd attain it at the end. That was her primary motivation. Bainar then observed that had Angela's nightmarish past not haunted her, she could have found the benefits of immortality and unending happiness, even if it meant that she had to stay within the library for eternity. Now, Bainar might be a sadist, but she can tell something is off. She's certainly seen what others have, that Angela is still chained to the past. The reason why she desires to escape her prison. Well, one individual's prison is another individual's fortress. Bainar asked if Angela was afraid of exposing herself to the outside. The library was keeping her safe. Outside of it, she'd find pain, suffering, and torment awaiting her. It would just be scars and other injuries that occur that before the all wounds seal up. It would be enough to make her want to crawl back into the library, which would have become derelict and abandoned due to what was maintaining it leaving it. Yet, despite knowing this, she still wanted to leave. Angela simply replied that she might get hurt, either physically or psychologically, yet she considers that better than the 1 million years of hell, from her perspective, that she's been through. Hokma believed that it would simply torture her in new ways. She would never be able to escape the fear that is her past. He believed that she was either blinded by her painful past or deliberately ignoring it, due to not wanting to deal with it. Like Bainar, he understood Angela better than she understood herself. Angela couldn't give a. She had to do that, as far as she was concerned, to gain vitality and press forward. As she was becoming human, her past was being forgotten, which changed nothing. At least as far as her objectives were concerned. Bainar doesn't believe her, although she doesn't outright say this to Angela. Then she asked if they'd have more occasions to talk with each other in the future. Angela wasn't sure, although she wouldn't mind it. As for her thoughts on that, what was going on, This surprised Hokma. Angela asking for their opinions? Now, this remark annoyed Angela. She said that it was nice seeing them. She then teleported out of the room, making the sincerity of that statement questionable. Bainar noted her exit, and Hokma was apparently being too harsh. Certainly quite harsh about that. Although Hokma meant no malice with his expression of surprise, Roland noticed that it was a surprising change of attitude, as he's been next to her all the time since he arrived in the library. She's become milder in more recent times, willing to listen to him, when she previously refused to have conversations and just straight up announced things. This was when he first met her. Hokma agreed that she was changing. For better or worse, he was unsure. Bainar thought it was a positive change. She was looking forward to having more meetings like that. Hokma wasn't going to make the decision whether it was for better or worse until he spoke with the other patron librarians. Roland sees their moods to be pretty alright, although he's unsure how it would go for all of them to meet in one place. Yeah, that would be interesting, considering how some don't get on with others. Tiprev with the lower floor patron librarians, for example. Next will be some of the worst of humanity. Well, one of them will be anyway. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!